Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Invisible Walls, episode 229 here on GameTrailers.com in the thick of Q4. Lots of big games to talk about, but first, a couple housekeeping items I want to get to. First of all, our other podcast, Side Mission Briefing, just went on iTunes. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to it. You've probably seen it on the site. It's a really good podcast. Rocco does a great job getting great guests for that show pretty much every single week. So I highly recommend subscribing to it, rate it, check it out. I think if you haven't already, you're going to really like it. Another thing, on November 5th here in Los Angeles, we're doing a little jammy jam called the GT Film Fest. And essentially, it's all our content partners from GameTrailers.com are creating special episodes just for this live, I guess it's just a viewing party, I guess is the best way to put it. It's not going to be
a
real.
Celebration.
A celebration of video game media. It's not going to be real uppity or whatnot. It's not going to be in a boring theater. It's actually kind of a fun hangout while we roll some new videos of our big partners. We're also going to have a new episode of Pop Fiction there. We're going to have the first ever trailer of the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. Yes, he is making a movie. The world premiere of his very first trailer is going to happen there. If you want to know more about the Film Fest, how you can go, just check out the site. It's pretty much plastered all over the site. If you're in LA, you're going to be in the city on November 5th. RSVP, it is first come, first served. There are going to be awesome gift bags given away, not the least of which in the bag is going to be a limited edition GT Film Fest t-shirt. So I highly recommend anyone close to LA come and hang out with us. We're all going to be there as well. You'll get a chance to meet us, hang out with us. Other big surprises coming as well that we can't quite announce yet. Just wanted to get it on your radar. LA peeps, make sure you come out and see us. And then a final note, just wanted to talk a little bit about our review for Medal of Honor Warfighter. Our review for that game is going to be going up pretty late. EA has decided to not send us copies of the game until the day it ships. If you've watched the show over the last few years, I think you know buyer beware, maybe. Typically when that happens...
The phrase you're looking for is dodgy as fuck.
I'm not going to say it, but Marcus can.
Caveat emptor.
Well, especially when we're used to getting
the original
early
Latin
stuff from them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically we get games for review from EA well in advance of the game. And in fact, usually the embargo for those reviews is well in advance of the release date. So, you know, they haven't said why. I'm not going to put words in EA's mouth. But the bottom line is we are not getting the game until it releases. And typically, you might want to wait and check out reviews in a scenario like that. So anyway, let's get on with the show. You've heard from pretty much everyone already, but I'll introduce them anyway. Ryan Stevens is here.
Howdy.
Daniel Bloodworth is in the house.
Okay.
And Marcus Beer.
Shazam!
Let's go.
As the city filled up with people, the streets filled up with garbage.
All right, first up, we're going to talk about a game that has kind of been a darling here in the offices ever since we saw it. I believe we gave it Best Downloadable Game at E3 this year.
Oh, God,
that
I
right?
don't remember.
I don't remember for
I know
sure.
for a fact it was a nominee. We'll have to double check that.
I
the
thought
game-
Hawken won that one, didn't it?
You're right. Hawken did win that. One of our favorite downloadable games from E3. The Unfinished Swan, probably one of the most unique games that have come across our offices in quite a while. Journey maybe being the other one this year that really made a big impact on us. Ryan, you reviewed The Unfinished Swan. Mm-hmm. Live up to our expectations? You gave it a pretty high score, but not extraordinary.
I really dug it. You know, I think I have seen some internet chatter where people are actually it seems like kind of upset that it's not just
Throwing
chucking
paintballs?
paint at blank canvases. And
Well, what percentage of the game is made up of that mechanic?
I mean, it never really goes away. There's always going to be parts where you have to do it, but it never actually does like a repeat of the opening where it's literally
Blank canvas.
pure white and you're like evoking the world alive. And I don't know. I feel like people may feel like they just want that, and there's that kind of sense of this kind of visual exploration for doing that. But as a game, this game actually works. I mean, this is going to sound a little silly, but the feelings that this game evoked from me were kind of like Mario 64, where you kind of like really know a space. I've talked about this a bunch, but like the Mario 64 idea of these little 3D worlds that are really thought out, and you know what's going on, and they have purpose, and
you learn every nook and cranny.
and yeah, you know, you're
level
exploring and stuff like that. But also, and this is, people are gonna go, what? But Metal Gear Solid 1, because Metal Gear Solid 1, you kept getting like, you have the Minesweeper, you got the sniper rifle, and they don't just give you a lame tutorial. It's actually like a little stage where you have to use that item, use that mechanic, and then it kind of gets added to your repertoire. The repertoire part maybe doesn't happen all so much, but their way of introducing something and then making you work through it, it's just really good pacing. And it's the kind of thing where a digital game where, you know, the game's maybe 3.5, 4 hours long, but with the replay value of there's a bunch of secrets to find and stuff to unlock. And I thought the story was actually pretty good, which really surprised me.
Did we have any idea what the story was before the
There was a trailer.
Some hints of it?
There was a trailer that kind of basically showed the intro with oh god, with Monroe, the little boy you play as. But the game just like I mentioned this in the review, but there was a point where I walked up to this vista and I was like, whoa, and then the little character goes, wow, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's like my inner child.
Do you think it's a case maybe where the way they marketed the game with its media, people were under the wrong impression that maybe every level started with the blank canvas, or?
Well, that was like the initial thing. I think that's what the game was at the very beginning. I don't know if they even had more of a concept than that until, you know, they've been working on this for 5 years, 4 years.
I mean, that's the thing, is they've been really
It's a long
secretive. You know, when I first saw it and I interviewed the guy, you know, it was, you know, he was very clear that that was going to be a small percentage of the game, but
That was
they
like
didn't want to spoil and show the other mechanics.
That was like a year ago, right?
Not a year ago. It's just a few months before E3.
Recently.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah. But like when we saw that game at like GDC, it was just the paint thing. You know, it was literally just that. And
Every
then-
demo I've seen for it that's what it
But
was.
they had released trailers that kind of showed the red paddles, which is like
Right.
kind of basic physics, but still kind of fun to mess around with. The vine mechanic. I don't want to go past that, but like the vine mechanics I found were really fun. Just to, like, again, that kind of like painting idea. Anyone who enjoyed that one room in Portal 2, where basically you just have to get the paint everywhere.
Yeah. I think everybody enjoyed that.
I mean, there's that kind of idea of just like messing around that it is pretty fun. Yeah, it's a good game, except for one big problem that I know Marcus had, and I had the exact same problem.
And that would be PlayStation Network being really shitty over the wireless network. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter how
Yeah.
powerful it is.
I could not
it's
download it
fucking disgusting.
for an entire day, and then finally when I was able to download it, it's a gig, and it took me, I don't know, hours upon hours. And you know, I have cable, it's not the fastest, but I don't, this is a small aside, I know we can talk about this forever.
To be honest.
I plug in, if I take my PlayStation over to my router and plug it in, good speeds. Not great speeds, but good speeds. Over Wi-Fi, so hit and miss. I don't understand it, and the signal's fine, but sometimes I can stream things like 4 bars on Netflix or Hulu, sometimes totally useless. When I was reviewing Dark Souls and they released the patch, it was a 14 meg patch. I'm like, whatever, it may take a little bit.
Right.
That was a case where it kept stopping, and I literally had to plug it in to a hardwire to get it to work. So I don't know what's going on, and I know I'm not the only one with
I
that issue.
downloaded
Yeah.
Sleeping Dogs on the PC through Steam, the entire game in less than half an hour. 4 hours it took me for Unfinished Swan.
Yeah.
And I had to restart at one point because I was like, okay, why is this going so slow? Maybe I can, if I download it in the background.
I don't know if like
And
the little...
I hit that button, which I didn't think to look, and it canceled my download because you can't download the fucking game in the background.
Typically what I do with PSN is before I go to sleep, I set stuff up to download, and then when I wake up, it's there.
My stuff
but I do
fails.
that because it's so slow.
My stuff just fails.
Well,
so
maybe
it
another
doesn't
part
count.
of it too is remember they launched the brand new store. It was up for like a
Right.
day, and then they took it down. So maybe they're having some technical issues.
No, I've had
But
this
it's
forever.
always-
Yeah, I
it's
mean, me
always
too,
been like
but
that.
I'm just trying to be.
What I don't get is
double-
it's hit and miss for Wi-Fi, so I don't know if it's like the antenna's just close to something. But I know Miguel. I think I'm right here. I think Miguel has the exact opposite, where his Xbox downloads are really hard to do over Wi-Fi, but his PS3 ones are fine. So I don't know how that stuff works, but
I
I'm
wonder
just
if
stating my
it's-
argument. But Unfinished Swan,
Yeah, let's get back to the game.
totally
What
cool.
PlayStation, what model of PS3 are you using? Because I mean, I have one of the old
Oh,
school original.
mine's
I have the launch unit. yeah.
Mine's software PS2 emulation, not hardware or PS2 emulation. It was the Metal Gear
So
Solid
you're in a
4
second
bundle.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it is the old, maybe it's the older ones. Maybe the new PS3
Slims.
that
The
the
slimmer
Slims
ones.
have better. I mean, and that would be interesting. I'm sure you will let us know in the comments if we're wrong on this.
They always do. So let's get back to the game. Obviously, Journey, probably the biggest downloadable game. How does it compare to that? Would you tell someone to buy this if they enjoyed Journey?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think this is more maybe classic game, and I know I gave the Mario 64 example to Journey as well. But Journey is kind of easy to. I mean, unless you were like trophy hunting. I mean, Journey's kind of easy to fumble through, and anyone can play, and it has that unique kind of online experience. Unfinished Swan is more of a traditional game, even if some of its mechanics are a little less traditional. Even though I would say you scratch a little bit beneath the surface, and it's not even that untraditional. It's just revealing things, exploring, climbing, playing some physics puzzles and stuff like that. It's not really, they may not be the most challenging things in the world, but they're fun to work through. It's not so easy that you're like yawning. It's like, I always feel like the best puzzles in a game aren't the ones that stump you. They're the ones that you figure out while you're messing around with them. Like you try a couple things, and for this sort of game, like I still think there may be kind of this mentality about game length and stuff. But when you start factoring in prices and experiences, there is this kind of idea that you're kind of going through the story. And the way the game's kind of set up, especially in the early stuff, where there's the paint, even though the game itself is kind of linear and it has some little hints with like the footsteps that you can follow and stuff like that, it does give this idea of like grand exploration, even if it is kind of funneling you down a path.
How much is the game?
It's $15.
$15.
Did you play with the Move? Or?
Move actually works. Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, because I can't find my Move. It's somewhere at home, but I know I can play it on
Move
6
always
assets.
works. I don't have a problem with Move. Like
No,
from a
well,
tech perspective.
okay, talking about another kind of indie weird game, Datura felt like dog shit. Like with the controller or with the Move or anything. This worked. The game's kind of a little lazy. There's kind of like an MC Escher room where you drop something below you and it will end up above you. And I was trying to look up to kind of see it hit, and the game's kind of slow, so you can kind of see the remnants of the aftermath of you doing it, but you can never actually catch it really in the act. So I think that kind of slower pace kind of lends itself to having the Move kind of work. And I was using the Move without the
Navigation.
sub controller, whatever it's called.
The nunchuck?
Literally, I was just using. I almost said that. I was literally just using the wand with the X and Y button for the under button to go forward, another button to jump, and another button to go backwards, and it worked fine with aiming around. And it is kind of fun to fling stuff around, but you're not really flinging it. I guess you're just aiming like a light gun game. But.
So several years of development seems extreme for a game that they're selling for $15. They're going to need to sell a ton of
Small
these
staff.
to make money. Should people buy it?
I mean, if people are into experiences and, this is a game that you can go back to every once in a while and kind of enjoy. It's kind of like it has a kind of movie aspect to it. And there is a lot to explore. Like, I missed probably 1/3 of the balloons my first way through, and I was getting pretty into it after I kind of figured out there was way more balloons. I thought there was only 9 balloons in the entire game in the beginning because of the way the game was set up. And there's just some fun stuff to mess around with, and so, like, I still haven't found a couple of the secrets.
Well, what was interesting to me about this is when I did that interview a few months back is, they were actually talking about at that time that they were actually making the game shorter. Like, they were making sure that, like, every part of that game was actually, like, worth playing.
Yeah, I did an interview with Ian Dallas at PAX. He's next door. We should try to get him over. And I asked him what was on the cutting room floor, and he said there was actually an aspect of the game where they were doing something with like water prisms and colors, and they worked on it for like 3 months, and then they just realized like it just wasn't working, and that they cut it completely. I wonder if they could give us some footage of that. I would be curious to see what it was. The thing I found really interesting is I was joking about the ink splat when you kind of just throw it, and I'm like, oh, is that randomly generated? And he said they were actually experimenting with randomly generated ink splats, and people were seeing things in them. So they actually had to spend a ton of time making something that was not recognizable as anything.
So it's like an ink blot test that psychiatrists give people.
The Rorschach. But they said so it's not always the same. They rotate it. So that's their trick. But they actually had to refine this kind of random visual element to make it really random, because he's like, people kept throwing it and being like, is that Florida? And stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Good game though.
A long time ago, there was a big pile of treasure in the desert, and the Vault Hunters found it and killed all the bad guys. The end.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about the first piece of DLC for probably the most popular game released in the last few months, Borderlands 2, DLC called Captain Scarlet and Her Pirate's Booty. Bloodworth, you ripped through this game in a day or two. Reviews up already.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty good piece of DLC.
Yeah. Well, I find it humorous that the first Borderlands they started with zombies. This one they're starting with pirates.
Right.
But yeah,
The next one's going to be ninjas, probably.
I was actually pretty surprised at how meaty and how lengthy this was for being so soon after the game. I mean, it really wasn't even a full month after the game came out.
Like 8 hours, right?
Yeah, it's 8 hours, probably
That's
somewhere.
the length of the DLC, not
somewhere
how long
around
it took to release the DLC after the game.
Somewhere around.
Pretty close, though.
Right, somewhere around 30 quests or so, I'd say, probably. About 7 zones.
That's good.
Yeah, and they have some repeated enemies like spider ants and loaders and stuff, but most of the human enemies have been reskinned with pirate costumes, or they're like all new types of enemies in there as well. Few different bosses. They've got another one of those like end level like raid bosses that you can tackle if you are up to level 50.
Sadistic.
Yeah, and I found a guy that apparently is offering some kind of black market for the rewards you get out of that boss. So I don't know what that is, but I'm sure somebody in the comments might be able to tell us.
Did you find the Easter egg?
I didn't see the BioShock thing. I saw that online the day later. I'm like, oh man, how do they keep finding these and I don't?
Have you played it, Marcus?
I haven't played it yet, but I saw the Easter egg, and I got to say that's pretty cool. That's pretty smart cross-marketing.
Well,
Yeah.
they've done a lot of kind of nods to other games in this game. I think that's something we all kind of like in games.
There's references all over the place. So.
Now, the level part of it, you were a little afraid before you started playing it that your character was going to be too high level for the DLC to be actually interesting. How did that ultimately play out for you?
Well, my character was definitely... It's weird because my character was definitely over-leveled. I was at 36 after I had done all my side quests and stuff, and all the enemies were between like 21 and 32. So there are even some bosses. Actually, most of the bosses were fairly disappointing for my experience. But I guess, if you're one of the like super fans and you've gone through True Vault Hunters mode, when you're on True Vault Hunters mode, that's like the new game plus.
Yeah.
Like all the enemies actually do scale along with you in that mode. And so people are saying that, that actually, it was pretty challenging when they jumped into the DLC. So it's this kind of weird hit or miss depending on where your character is at.
Do you think they obviously released the new character class?
Right.
And I'm thinking that they thought, all right, well,
Everyone's going to start
everybody's
over.
going to start over, and this DLC will complement that.
But you wouldn't be able to, right?
Right,
Just get your
because
ass
in True
kicked.
Vault Hunters mode, you can only do that with a character that you've completed the game with, can't you?
The levels that you were talking about in the DLC.
Right, but if you're, you would have to be at least probably in the mid-20s to be able to go in there.
Which you can do.
But I guess you could have done that in a week, yeah. Yeah, so,
So you have to go back and play the rest of the game again with a new class to be able to handle the DLC. I don't see a lot of people doing that.
I'm just saying, like, for somebody like me who, like, I kind of wrapped up all the side quests and then, I didn't do a new game plus. I moved on to another character, actually moved on to the PC version and started another character there. Yeah, so, like, for me, that experience was not great in terms of challenge, but there still were some enemies that were challenging, some situations where they had a lot of enemies thrown at me. But for the most part, I felt over-leveled.
How's the loot? Obviously a big part of any game
Actually,
like
yeah,
this.
because
No loot whatsoever.
But there is booty.
I had complained about
Another
some of the
name
first
for
Borderlands
pirates,
DLCs.
Yeah.
This one they did a pretty good job. They actually have you find these messages in bottles, and they lead you inevitably to like an X marks the spot somewhere. But it's like a zone, so you have to search this area, and there some of them.
Is it kind of like the dowsing rod in Skyward Sword, one of those deals?
No, not like that. They just kind of put a big circle on your map, and you have to search within that circle to find where the X is. But some of them are pretty well hidden, and every one of those treasures has an associated curse. So the first one you find is like a shotgun, but the shotgun also kind of like does like a blowback onto you. So it gives you a little bit of minor damage when you use it. The last one, the curse was called something like Curse of the Cackling Designer.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh, God.
Yeah. It was a grenade mod, and it was a MIRV grenade, so like when it blows up, it creates a bunch of mini grenades. The thing is with that mod, I'd say 70 to 80% of the times, those mini grenades all fly back at you. So I was killing myself more than the enemies were killing me.
Now at the end, you get like a big load of loot, though, right? It's
Yeah,
almost worth
there's
paying the money for the DLC just to get the big.
There's a room full of blue and purples, and so it's like you're just like trying to pick what the best ones are, since your backpack's probably pretty full by that point. And then afterwards I actually got like a quest that sort of, kind of like General Knox, it's a quest that sort of lets you repeat the ending and go in and get more loot again.
Now, how much was it, and is it worth buying? And was it on the disc, or did you have to actually download something?
Oh, I actually had to download for sure. But yeah, it's $10. I'd say it's definitely worth buying. You know,
8 hours of play for $10. That's pretty good value.
Especially if you know like what you're getting into and you kind of work around that like weird level gap. If you do go on true player's mode, I don't know for sure, but you can probably get to a fast travel station and get to it a little better that way.
Oh, that's the other thing you should clarify with everybody who's trying to play it. You aren't the only one who had problems, by the way. I spoke to somebody else yesterday who was like, I had no idea how to get to the new content. Can you explain that to everybody?
Yeah, there's not, like a lot of times, I'm used to DLC, like when you jump in, there's a message or something to tell you how to get to it. It's like, no, there's nothing. I wander around thinking that it didn't load right because I had it pre-released.
Busted or, yeah.
And it's like, no, they just add Oasis to your fast travel system, which is already loaded up with every other place that you've been.
So basically, you go to fast travel, look for Oasis, and it'll take you there.
Yeah. On a small aside, when the Dark Souls DLC comes out for console users next week, there's going to be a lot of internet searching to see how to access it because it is obscure.
And how do you know this?
Because I played the PC version that had the same content.
All right. All right, so Miguel Lopez has joined us, our reviews editor here on GameTrailers, to talk about Retro City Rampage, a 2D take on the open world crime game, I guess is the best way to put it. A long time in the making. I mean, I've been hearing about this game for feels like 4 years now.
Yeah.
The wait doesn't sound like it was really worth it, though.
That's a fun game. I mean, you played it too.
It's silly. I mean, it is silly, and I bought it day one and got like 10% off, so it was only $13.
Yeah.
But it definitely just it does every single thing within its power to put you back to sort of like the late 80s, early 90s of in gaming. It's got every trope imaginable.
Right. And it's
some of the memes are kind of played out and old, right? Because it took so long to create it that like some of those things have stuck around for a month or two. Now they're still in the game and they seem like yesterday's meme.
Yeah, but it kind of goes for the see what sticks approaches. So like,
It's nonstop.
It's such a consistent barrage that whatever 9 out of 10 might be knee slappers, but one of them will get you. You know what I mean?
A belly laugh.
Well, it's funny because you say knee slappers as in that's not good. I've always thought of knee slappers as a great joke.
I thought
This is becoming an interesting
I thought knee
conversation.
slappers was like her.
No, that means when you laugh so hard that you start slapping your knee.
Okay, well.
But
Let's go. Just got reviews.
Okay, they're chuckles versus guffaws.
Sure. I think we're going to have to go to Urban Dictionary on this and settle this
There's
shit.
definitely some groan-worthy stuff in there. You're right, where it's like, oh god, but it's because because the game's just so silly and old and
But it's not old. It's brand new.
It's
supposed to be brand new.
There's also the fact I think I'm kind of a stupid guy and I laugh at stupid shit. So
I like stupid humor too. I mean,
it works on me. A lot of it, you just get a guy talking like freaking Bill and Ted, and I'll laugh at that. So,
yeah. So let's talk about how the game plays. Now, obviously, it's 2D, sprite-based. How is it like operating the cars and all that stuff from that perspective? I mean, we've all played the old GTAs, but
yeah, I don't remember how the old GTA games.
Well,
play.
GTA is straight up top down.
Right.
They give you two control options for the cars. You can either do the rotational, where you can do left and right while accelerating, or you can just literally press left and
Right.
left.
There's the 1-to-1 approach, and then there's the one that's like a little bit more techy, I guess, a little bit more demanding.
Cutting edge.
But like it, the other one is a little more satisfying to play. It's almost like RC Pro-Am or something. But I don't feel like there's a point to you. Like I don't think that the increased depth really gives you much. It's just I think so you could feel cool because you're doing it. I played it on that for a while, then I just switched back when I had to do like some stupid race mini game, and I was like, all right, this is good enough, man. Turning on a dime, like doing 360 turns to like run a bunch of people over, like that works fine.
Running people over, fun in 2D, fun in 3D,
Yeah, like fun no matter what.
Fun in real life.
Yeah. Not
hard to do.
Not surprising.
Get away with.
You run over the people, they drop coins. You run over the cops, they drop guns.
Right.
I mean, it's
The game has a cover system.
It does, yeah. That's so weird. Like I forgot until like halfway. They're like, oh shit, I could take cover. Like, you do that. But yeah, like if you play it like a twins, like I played it like Robotron basically.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel that a lot of the time, like the objectives and the story kind of got in the way of what that game wants you to do, which is to just get in the car and like run people down until the National Guard comes and starts trying to.
But they can never catch you. The cops can never catch you because you're always going.
So you never have a fear of actually getting busted in the
No,
game?
you could get mad. Like once you get to a certain level, like tanks start to come, and you could get in a tank and like really mess stuff up, and then there's like 5 tanks chasing you. So at that point, it's kind of like a race against the clock, right? Like, can you survive long enough to like really mess shit up?
What's the objective of the game? Is there one,
Yeah, like,
or is it just to mess around and have fun?
The guy from Back to the Future wants you to build him a time machine.
But he already built one.
But then you're also supposed to, it's like there's you're playing generic henchman number 4. I mean, it does come with an open world version that's just total sandbox.
Right.
That's where you can just drive and fuck around.
Right.
But I got to admit, the first time that I got the cover mission where it's like, oh, you have to wait until he looks the other way, now go.
Right.
That just took me back to the very first Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost as if the guys who did it had a checklist of Super NES guy. All right, the guy who did it had a Super NES checklist, a Mega Drive checklist, all the Amiga games. It's like, all right, we're gonna do this and this.
That's what's the weird part. He's a young guy. I think he was probably born in the mid '80s when all this stuff was already out. Like when he was.
He
like
never even
a baby.
experienced it firsthand.
Well, I mean, he probably got a tag. Went to a tag sale or a garage sale or something and got it. But it's funny. He's a cool dude.
But I think definitely, if you are a gamer of a certain age or a product of a certain era, you will certainly appreciate this as oh my god, I used to blow my wad over these games. And
did the hot coffee parody make it into the final version with the Saved by the Bell characters?
Oh yeah.
I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
Would you recommend buying this? Because it sounds like it's mindless fun, but
that's the best kind.
Yeah, I mean,
typically it is.
It harkens back to a more innocent.
It's the kind of game that if I hadn't reviewed it, I would have bought it. Just
you would have
sight unseen, yeah, just because,
just because.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's fun, it's silly. I think for $15, again, given we're on a roll today. I think with what we've covered, for what you can get for $10 or $15, it shows how good this stuff can be. And yeah, I think it's anything that can make me smile and groan that much literally within like 3 seconds of each other.
Would you buy this or the Unfinished Swan, Marcus? You've played both, and Ryan, you played both for a little bit.
Swan. I finally downloaded Unfinished Swan because it was literally took all of yesterday to download. I think honestly, I would get both. I mean, I think
that's not the question.
Well, I can't say because I haven't played Unfinished Swan.
I cut them in half.
If it was, say, Journey or this one, I would probably go with Journey.
Yeah.
Because, I just love that game. I adore it to bits. But I think this one's just, it's like going to the bargain bin at Best Buy and getting that shitty 80s Jean-Claude Van Damme movie for $4.99 because, you know what, I want it in my, it's the shittiest Blu-ray transfer ever, but it's just hysterical and it's great to have.
Well, let's also be fair, like, there's a lot of, like, janky stuff in the game, too. Like, especially when it tries to go, like, hardcore into emulating specific games.
When it actually tries to be a game?
Well, when it tries to, like, really deliver on a specific kind, like, there's a, I don't want to ruin too much of it, there's Explosion Man parody in there that...
Wow, they really dive deep.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny and it's, like, interesting that they did it, and it's kind of crazy how far they took it. But it doesn't work that well, So that's kind of like what bugs me about the game.
Hit or miss in some of the.
I actually have a question then, because like Explosion Man's way more recent, and from what I've always seen, it's been like I guess they did have the Dark Knight parody right at the beginning, but I keep thinking of this game probably because of its look and the gameplay stuff I saw as being very nostalgic for people like in their early 30s. But my question is for kids people who are teenagers right now. Are they still going to have fun with this game? Part of me that wants to play this game is I can pretend I'm playing a Nintendo, and imagine if this game was out on a freaking NES. That's
the new
awesome.
Generation of players are they going to care or know what the hell this stuff means?
I don't know if they'll get it.
I don't know. I think younger people these days are pretty
without the
familiar with
nostalgic
pop culture from back then. Like that stuff is still pretty prevalent.
TMNT's back.
Yeah,
exactly.
An average iOS game. I mean, the game is old and dated, but I think it depends on your level of how much you love the old 8-bit stuff. And there are people who's they may be teenagers now, but their dads grew up playing this stuff, and their dad said, "All right, this is what I played." And if you go in expecting Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But if you're over 21 and you want to imbibe some alcohol and play this game, it's just daft, and it makes me smile. Smiling is good. The other game that made me smile this week, playing Doom on my 360, original Doom as part of the BFG thing. No jumping. No reloading and unlimited weapons.
No aiming up and down.
Yeah.
And probably better than Doom 3.
Ooh. Probably.
And next we're going to talk about a game that personally I feel is slipping under the radar a little bit. Far Cry 3. That game is coming out this year, I believe in late November. Miguel had a chance to go and play it from the beginning for at least several hours. What's your opinion of it now that you really had a chance to kind of dive into it? We've all kind of got little patches. I got to play a lot of the co-op stuff and just sort of bits and pieces from the campaign here and there. What's your impression now that you kind of started it from the beginning and you've seen how it's going to build up to become a game?
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. It reminds me a lot of Red Dead, actually, the way that the world is laid out and the way that objectives are interspersed all over the place, the way that you kind of see the environment not only as a place to, have tactical battles, but also a place that's full of resources that you're going to harvest in order to build stuff. It's very much like that. And you're right. It has kind of slipped under the radar. The other day, Ryan and I were going through and making the calendar. And
December 4th.
December 4th, we were like,
December 4th.
Yeah, it's going to be, there's always
They're
one game.
They're really trying to get out of that Call of Duty shadow there.
Well, there's always
Halo.
There's always that one game in December. It seems like every year there's always one game that's we'll go after Black Friday.
Yeah.
And I guess that's going to be this game this year.
It's tough. This is the wrong year, I think, to
Far
do
Cry
that.
2 got buried. Far Cry 2 got great reviews, and it just did not.
Right.
The year when what was that? 09, I think, or 10. Well, it doesn't matter. But it just got buried that holiday season.
And this Q4 is really slim for just about any genre but shooters. You have Black Ops 2 and Halo 4 both coming out within a week or two of each other.
Right.
Then this one follows on a month later.
Yeah, this is, I wouldn't lump this one along with those. It's a shooter, but it's kind of, I don't know. It's
open world.
Yeah, it's it's a sandbox game.
But it's still competing, I believe, for mindshare with people who are looking to buy games over the holidays.
Right, yeah. People are going to see the screenshot with the gun on it, and they're going to be like, which one do I want? The jungle one,
Kill
the
Streaks.
Ops one, or the
aliens one, yeah.
Did you run into any animals?
Oh yeah, tons.
Because the animal stuff is what I think is really cool.
The thing that I came away with is that when the game is not kind of leading you by the nose to an objective, it's kind of a pain in the ass to walk around because there's so many guard patrols. You're walking around, you could get jumped by a Komodo dragon or a freaking tiger.
It has a radar though, right? So you can keep an eye on that stuff, or does it not?
I don't remember if there was. I don't remember really using it, but yeah, there's a. When you're in the environment and there's something you could harvest, you'll see that kind of prominently displayed, so you'll know to go for it. And now that you mention it, there is a mini map that shows you specific kinds of resources and also different pickups and stuff. But the basic layout, as far as I can see, from playing it for a couple hours, was you basically go to radio towers, which kind of reveal different portions of the map.
So it's like Assassin's Creed and sinking areas.
Yeah. You could go to those areas before you do the radio towers.
Funny, both Ubisoft games.
Yeah. You could go to places on the map before you reveal them, but you won't be able to see their features on the mini map. So your incentive is to go there and kind of broaden your view.
Do you have to climb the radio tower?
You know, I mean, not like Altair style.
You get to jump off the top?
You gotta go up, and then there are often like, bandit dudes hanging around trying to kill you before you get there, and yeah, like so many before you like liberate areas and capture bases and kind of turn them over to the friendly tribe. Like the areas are just deep with enemies, and like kind of every site you stumble upon, you have to kind of plan an attack, because usually if you go in guns blazing, you're gonna get your ass kicked. Like,
I did pick up on that in the limited time I played. You have to be very thoughtful.
So it's like Far Cry 2.
Yeah, and like you could kind of tailor the character to how you want to play. Like there's did you ever see the tattoo system that they have?
Yeah.
That's kind of like their upgrade system. So just think like RPG skill trees. If you want to be stealthy, you could put points into that as you level up. And the way I ended up doing it was just to see how it works, just like doing stealth stuff, and it's a pretty effective way to kind of go into a base, pick out the stragglers that are around with stealth, and then inevitably somebody's going to see you, and then you just take it to a firefight from there.
Does then a pack of wolves come by and fuck everyone
yeah,
up?
like a Tyrannosaurus Rex with a caveman
like,
on top of him.
I don't know, they keep showing the animals, so...
What's the objective of the game? Like, what's the story? So you mentioned earlier you're taking over portions of the map for another tribe. What is that? What's the setup for that?
Basically, you were on some like party trip vacation with your bros, and you get captured by what seems to be like some drug lords, right? Like it all takes place in some vaguely Caribbean island with vaguely Latino gangsters or like militia guys and like whatever. They
lots of AK-47s.
Yeah, and it's like a really grisly scene where they capture you. You see them like killing all your friends and shit. A few of you survive. A few of you like.
Are these spoilers, by the way?
I mean, it's the beginning of the game, so
all right.
Whatever. I mean, maybe it's a spoiler.
I think the killing all your friends part might have been a spoiler.
Well, not all your friends. They kill some of your friends.
Okay, all right.
Just the annoying ones.
Just your bros.
The ones who survive, you guys mount an escape, and then eventually, your goal becomes to like
rescue
your friends. Get back, like make sure everybody's cool, everybody survives.
Did you do any of the illicit drugs? Did you trip balls in the game yet?
I did trip balls, but not. It wasn't like participating in the ritual that they showed. Like there was like a one scripted mission where you gotta find some specific mushrooms in order to cure somebody who's sick. And I guess in the process you get dosed with them, so like, you're going through a cave and all of a sudden it just turns into some crazy trip.
What the fuck is going on? Wow. This is new?
So going back to the animals, can you get a herd of animals chasing you and you run through the camp, World of Warcraft style, where you're like chaining all the animals behind you and they just rip?
Oh no, yeah. Like you will frequently see like Komodo dragons fighting with bandits. You know what I mean?
And you can manipulate the wildlife to take care of enemies for you.
I mean, if this, I think it's like a right place at the right time thing. Like I didn't, at least as far as I played, like I didn't have any tools that's like, here's a luring dart to lure it to this
elk urine.
Yeah.
With a water gun.
I didn't see any of that stuff, but that would be cool, and I hope that's in there. Mainly, it seems that the animals are there, like apart from whatever that tactical stuff, they're there for you to kill and skin. And you use their skins to like make upgrades and shit.
So that's the Red Dead side again.
Now it's sounding even more like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny because like in order to carry more money, you have to upgrade your wallet. But in order to upgrade your wallet, you need like a specific type of animal. Like the bear skin's no good for wallets. The bear skin's only for this other stuff. So you got to do stuff like that. It's, I understand why they're doing it.
Do you kill sheep to make condoms?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Snake.
You don't want to get that island shit, right?
Now, so what's your impression of the game, Miguel? Did you enjoy your time with it?
Yeah, I did.
And it sounds like it's different from the other two big shooters that are coming out, which is probably good.
Yeah, certainly. It's I'm interested in this kind of like sandbox games in general. This seems cool. Like I think a lot of the crafting stuff is a little silly. And I don't know, like I understand why they want to do it. Like they want to connect the environment to like something you're actually doing in the game.
Yeah.
But like I think making you have to skin 10 bears to make your ammo pouch bigger is a little silly.
Yeah.
But
it's how they did it in olden times.
I guess so. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think just like when you play a lot of these games before they're released, there's a little bit of jankiness there.
Yeah, of course.
But nothing too bad.
Now, one thing I picked up on that you mentioned was how the kind of open world can be a little annoying. And I feel like this is kind of an interesting thing to talk about because I was playing Medal of Honor at Tokyo Game Show, and the mission that they had there, it's like you start the mission, you'd walk about 10 feet ahead and go into cover, and then you start getting shot from like every direction.
Right.
And the screen's going blurry, and there's red splotches going everywhere, showing you where you're getting shot from, and you're like, holy crap, what am I supposed to do here? And a lot of people complain about not just shooters, but almost all games these days have this very guided, linear cattle chute tunnel that you go through, and a lot of people complain about that. But the irony is that when you go back and you try to play a game that is open world, frustration can set in pretty quickly. So it's one of those things where I don't know if people are really asking for what they should be asking for, because maybe it's not as fun as people might think.
Yeah, I want to backtrack. Actually, I don't think it's annoying. I actually like that. I have to go through the environment and pay attention to these patrols. Like they could come into you, they could come on you like unexpectedly. You'll be walking, and then you'll hear the sound. You hear the sound of a car, and it's sure enough, it's bandits patrolling. So I suspect that once you start to claim bases for the friendly tribe. Oh, anyway, to answer your question that you asked 5 minutes ago, the friendly tribe are the people that you stumble into after you escape.
Oh, okay.
And they're the ones that are like,
they're like, we hate those dudes. Help us hate those dudes.
They're like, those cartel bandits are assholes. Please kill them.
Okay.
We want
so you join forces with another tribe.
Yeah, basically. So once you start to reclaim the land, I suspect that it becomes easier to move around it. But like when
because you would kind of know which direction they're coming from at that point.
Yeah. And then like there's friendly. Like once you clear a base of bandits, like the friendly troops move in.
Oh, okay.
So that area becomes yours. But yeah, like when you're traveling around in places that you've not claimed yet. You got the bandit patrols that they seem to follow what I assumed were like predetermined paths on schedule. Plus you have the wildlife. Plus you have so you really do feel like you're kind of in the shit and you have to be careful.
To go off of something you said though, like how like you get hit and the screen goes blurry and stuff. I know we have some guys here playing some unmentionable zombie games right now, and I know like if you're low on blood, the game's like monochrome and you're stumbling around. You guys all played Vanquish, right? Mm-hmm. Vanquish like does the exact opposite. You get fucked up, time slows down, you have a little time to retreat. I'm just curious if more people could maybe go that route.
I think that makes sense to me because
I mean they're both valid, but like maybe more people should try the Vanquish approach.
Well, I think human physiology, just the way that we're built, when you're under duress or under stress, your senses actually heighten. I mean, you become, that adrenaline starts going through you, and you actually become more adept at whatever it is you're doing in hopes of survival. So it is a little odd that in a lot of games it kind of goes the opposite direction. That's a pretty interesting point.
Or you just poop yourself.
Right.
It's fight or flight, right? Like you could either just gird yourself to face whatever, or you could like just shit a brick and run, right? Lose control.
And I just have one little thing to say about the Far Cry series. This is probably going to sound dumb, but I'm starting to feel like it's the Final Fantasy series of shooters, because the games themselves aren't really related, but they always have these reoccurring elements like islands. Well, I guess the second one's not an island, but kind of like islands, jungle, tropical kind of, a little more open world. I know the first Far Cry wasn't exactly open world, but that kind of like similar themes, like because like what Final Fantasy games, there's going to be a Chocobo, a Moogle, and a guy named Sid, and that's about all you got, That was random. Sorry. Just want to get it out there.
All right, next up, the return of On the Hook. It must have been months and months since we've answered any questions here on Invisible Walls. Because the games were kind of in the eye of the storm right now in Q4, not a ton of huge games to talk about. We thought we would bring it back to answer your big questions about kind of things that are going on right now, or about Q4 in general. Let's see, Ryan, you have the first question.
Yeah, this is from Joshua, who is at jfranklin4160 on the Twitter, and he asks, do y'all think Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo are going to phase out backwards compatibility via discs by next generation? So I'm not quite sure what next generation is, but I mean,
I think maybe he's assuming that the current generation we're in is called next generation. There's always some weird nomenclature thing.
Yeah,
like,
right.
When do you stop calling it next generation?
Honestly, I don't have a solid answer and opinion. My thing just goes straight to the logic, and I think soon as like the PSP Go, soon as there is no disk drive, obviously they won't have backwards compatibility that way, and we saw how well trying to get your library over there worked. And I think it comes down to kind of like the marketing guys saying, if it is really inexpensive to keep it in, we put it in there, we put it on the box, because people, even if people okay, people that come to GameTrailers like reverse compatibility. A lot of people who buy these systems don't care, but when they see it on the box, when they buy it, that's when they care. So if they can keep it in and it's a cost-benefit analysis thing, I think they're going to keep it. But it's all going to come down to money.
I think it's definitely getting cut. Because I think you're already starting to see the baby steps towards it. Like every new iteration of the PS3 does less with backwards compatibility. The fact that we're seeing so many HD remakes right now, that's money in the bank that they're not going to make if they have backwards compatibility and people can go back and play the old games. I just feel like there's too much money sitting on the table for them to remake these games and take out the backwards compatibility. That to what you said, the cost-benefit analysis, I don't think is going to work out for it. And truth be told, I haven't used backwards compatibility a whole lot on any of the machines I've had. I mean, granted, I have the old machine, so if I need, I can just go back and use the original console. But, I think I used backwards compatibility on the Wii like 3 times. I've used it on my PlayStation 3 for like the dumbest games. Like people will come over, they'll be like, oh, you have Jeopardy for the PlayStation or for the PlayStation 2. And then I pop it in and it kind of works. It's like this ugly ass, like... I would be surprised if the next machine's worried about it. And I think Sony, we're already seeing with them buying Gaikai that it may be an emulation type thing
that's
or
the thing.
streaming
If
type
software emulation becomes basically free, then maybe they'll have it in, again, but as it's a value add, I think that there are a lot of negatives, but if they can get, it's like the same reason that cable companies own channels, because it's more channels they can throw into their packages.
And going back to the cost-benefit analysis of that, they're also like, okay, well, we could probably, looking at our consumers, we can say, all right, well, let's make Final Fantasy VII available via stream. They're probably going to ask you to pay, and maybe that's a bad example because they probably ask you for more than this, but for a typical game, they're probably going to say, well, for $5, you can now stream this game and play this game if you want to. And I think that sort of goes back into, yeah, we can generate a lot of revenue from this. It's backwards compatible, but you're still kind of paying for it on a per game basis, which would
Or how about
really,
how if
really
they did
suck.
a Netflix model?
Yeah, I mean, don't you think that's more likely?
Like
Yeah,
a
I would
monthly fee,
Right.
stream
You
as
give
many
them
only
$8
if you want.
PlayStation Plus is already kind of that, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
They offer that service.
The primordial idea.
Yeah.
But I would say it's definitely not going to exist the way it does now. I think we can probably all agree to that. It's going to be some other solution to make it work, and probably one that makes the
The Wii
platform
U
holders
is going to
money.
play Wii games.
Right. Well, I think maybe that was actually the next generation
Okay.
part of this was
Yeah,
they're
things are
saying the
getting
Wii
confusing.
is supposed to be, but not really. All right. So anyway, Miguel, you have the next question.
This is from Joss Wardragon989 on Twitter. He says, what do you want to disappear next gen? Game mechanic, type of game, or otherwise? So, like, if you could disappear some shit, what would it be? I would disappear QuickTime events.
I knew everyone was going to say
it's
that.
Fucking, it's obvious, but it's done, man. Like, whenever... It's like a mind funeral. Whenever I have to see one come up, I want to die. It's like, all right, really?
Are you referencing the Magic the Gathering card?
Yes, dude.
Okay.
Mind funeral.
Look it up.
Are we all in agreement? I think that's
I don't agree 1,000% because I feel like before there were QuickTime events, I had to sit there and watch shit for 10 minutes at a time with no interaction whatsoever. I think there is a way that you can do them where they do add something to the game. It's pretty much impossible to make every CG sequence playable without,
Right.
So it kind of finds a way to help you interact with these scenes that right now with the current technology that we have, it's impossible to let you interact with it. I do agree that in this generation it has become egregious. Like some of them are just ridiculous, like the rope one in Ninja Gaiden or the climbing one in Resident Evil 6. Like stuff like that definitely needs to go.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there are some games that manage to do it well and actually keep me from putting the controller down and like kicking back while I'm watching like a cinema, and it keeps me on my toes while I'm playing a game.
You see, I think some of them are, I mean, they're all bad, some are less bad. But I think that, I mean, you're right. They serve a function, right, to keep you kind of like
Interactive.
doing
It keeps
something.
the game interactive.
Right. You see, I would rather game designers figure out ways to like tell a story without putting a video in front of you than to like, to kind of submit to this concession where...
But I would say one thing, too. One game that does do that very well is the Call of Duty franchise. Like, a lot of the stuff that happens in that game is all happening in-engine, in real time.
Right.
There's very few quick
They're really quick, though. Like, Call of Duty, they don't spend a lot of time, like, with you not in control, right?
But people hate it.
People hate what?
My next point was people hate Call of Duty for that. they are like, oh, it's like a Michael Bay film, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I see. I don't know. I don't agree with that critique. I think that those instances of Call of Duty kind of making stuff happen around you and kind of like letting you, whatever, form the momentary reaction to that.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way to do it. Like
Moving my head in outer space was awesome.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was such a little thing, but like
Yeah.
it mattered so much in that game.
Yeah. Anything else that any of you other guys think should be cut out of games?
Waypoints that have nothing to do with the game's story or something like that drives me bonkers. That like Fable 2, that fucking line coming out of your character. Like I mean,
laser.
Dead Space with the little hand, that matters. Drawing me into your world, do it. I mean, at least in a military game, you can imagine there's some CO somewhere, kind of like, you know, even if it's a little weird that there's like a random marker on the screen. But like, I don't have a problem with waypoints per se, but when they're implemented, they're just slapped in. It drives me fucking
What
bonkers.
about WoW style quests in non-MMOs? That's
Like
kinda-
fetch quests, you mean?
Yeah, or just like, you know, you get to this place, you see a bunch of like exclamation marks everywhere, and then all of a sudden the game is structured around you chasing down points on your map, as opposed to like whatever being in a game. you
Well,
know?
I think Guild Wars is already, I mean, and that's an MMO, and it's been able to skirt that issue pretty well.
Well, it kind of like, it hid it under a layer of blankets, but it's still there, I would say.
Yeah.
Connect games.
Connect games? You mean
All of them.
so motion-based games? Something you
No, Connect games.
would in particular?
I will say, having done Zombie Week last week and playing a couple old FMV games, wow, at least I would rather play a Connect game any day of the week, I think, than fucking
Night Trap.
FMV games. Oh, so we have been around that bend again.
Here's
before.
one that I'll offer that I would like to see go away is checkpoints that don't save. So you're playing a game, you're in the middle of a level, you get the checkpoint,
Well, it's like tricking you, right?
you shut the game
Like
off,
Psych?
you go back to load the game the next
okay.
day, and you have to start at the beginning of the level again. And after that happens the first time, what do? I just leave my console on until I'm finished reviewing that game, and I never turn it off.
But
Like,
that's the game designers making the game harder for you.
harder is not always better. Some cases it is,
Well, it's just
in this
lazy.
case it's
It's
not.
lazy.
So fake checkpoints, get the F out of here.
This is another one from Twitter from Lick Chan, who is a good guy. I interact with him a lot.
Lick Chan, one of our biggest fans. Thank you for all the support, bro.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the recent departures from Irrational Games? Should we be worried? And
Let's set it up first, because what, 2 more departures in the last 2 weeks? 3 or 4 guys before that. They've lost 7 to 8 big-time developers from their team over the last probably 10 months.
No showing at E3
Didn't show it at E3. We haven't seen a new piece of footage of this game
until today.
in forever. The announcement comes out that they cut the multiplayer. They couldn't get it to work. So with that in mind, Marcus.
I don't have a problem with them cutting multiplayer.
I don't either.
think it's a smart.
Because the multiplayer in
Just on
BioShock
the
2
proof
is
that you
stellar.
don't need multiplayer. I mean, I'm more than happy to go back to having a single player experience that's immersive without stuff being tacked in. I think they're getting to the stage where the game is a March release, I think it is. So,
Roughly.
I mean, unless there is something really, really bad going on at Irrational, that game is probably.
Well, I think that's what he's asking. He's asking, is there
I'm
something
saying,
bad going on
no,
there?
I mean, it could be a case. You know, the people who've left, their time could be done or coming to an end. The major features are all going to be locked in place. They're going to be programmed in. They are, they're probably, because they extended the deadline, the launch of the game, they're probably built in more time for final bug testing, so there's not going to be any major tweaks.
But what about the next game? Like, you don't want that talent there already starting to work on the sequel?
Let's face it, the games industry is, a lot of it's contract based, especially the higher up you get. I mean, people, do they want to be, the number 3 at Irrational or the number 2 somewhere else? You never know what really goes on in these things.
You may know the answer to this, actually. Well, how do the bonuses work out for some? But say, the guys that just left this week, will they get bonuses for the sales of the game?
I mean, it depends on how they left. If they
Maybe
were
how their
fired,
contract was structured?
Yeah, if they were fired, we don't know if they are. They
Right.
just, how it worked out, whatever. I mean, they could be having clashes with Ken Levine, who is a very headstrong individual. If they were fired, they forfeit everything. If they left on amicable terms, that's generally that's that tends to get honored.
Really? I always thought the carrot was you have to stick around.
Well, if this stuff is done
At
and they
least
want
till
to,
ship.
I mean, you
Yeah.
think about it. You're Irrational and 2K,
But would
and
it-
it's
yeah,
like,
it'd be
okay,
2K,
so
wouldn't
your
it?
stuff's done. You've got this offer to go somewhere else. We don't have to pay your salary for the next 3 months while we're polishing up the game, and you're kind of twiddling your thumbs. We don't have something else for you. It just depends on how the studio works, and I have yet.
I mean,
to,
generally
I've
a lot
yet
of
to
those
hear-
guys go out on media tours too when the game launches because they have these events all over the
who's going to be
world.
going on? Who's going to be going on those media
But
tours?
Ken Levine can't do it all.
He will probably do as many as he can. But the interesting thing, have we seen anybody saying bad things about Irrational from the people who've left?
Well, they would never do that.
No,
Because this industry
honestly,
is like a knitting circle.
there
You
would be-
throw a developer under the bus, you're
There
screwed.
would be. We've heard it before with the Team
Team
Bondi.
Bondi.
Yeah, there would be. It would come out in some way. We'd have Irrational spouse or whatever. It would find a way out if there was a problem. So I'm thinking, it's the game is behind schedule. They're not making a huge amount of money on it. I mean, luckily for 2K, they've had they're having quite a good time of it with some of the products like XCOM and Borderlands. I think it's probably more fiscal, but again, we won't know until somebody comes and talks about it.
And I would say I am a little worried about it on a personal level. I mean, kind of everyone has their own opinion on it, but yeah, I mean, I can't remember. I mean, you got to remember, this is a game that blew people away 2 E3s ago, won a ton of Best of E3 awards. Here we are, a year and a half later. We're not seeing much on the game. We're seeing a lot of people leave. I am a little concerned. Like, my hype level, for lack of a better term, has been subdued a little bit on this game
But
because of the
does it
stuff
need to be
coming out.
hyped right now when everything else is coming out? And this is my PR guy talking to you. If I know I've got a game coming out in March, a game of the level of BioShock Infinite, I mean, they announced the collector's editions this morning and showed off how pretty they are. I would say I would go dark, because I would basically be ready for January 1st or the first working day after January to start building that campaign in the 3 months that I have, knowing I can execute it, knowing I can knock it out of the park and get everybody hyped and steamroll everybody else. Why would I go up against Halo 4 or Borderlands, or why would I go up against Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed? I mean, I wouldn't bother. Let those guys have their moments, and then new year, new game, new BioShock. Boom, look at the size of our dick.
All right, we shall see. And I have the last question from Chris C. Do you see any hope for the Vita? I got mine at launch, yet it's largely unused. Only still have it because the resale value is so low.
I don't think it's going to go in any other direction, dude.
It can only go up, right? It can only get better.
I was talking about the resale value.
The Vita is the THQ stock of the handheld consoles, isn't it?
I think it does have hope. And the reason I feel that way is because I was just at Tokyo Game Show, and I would say that probably 40% of all the games that were at Tokyo Game Show were for the Vita. And I feel like and a lot of those games were Monster Hunter ripoffs, which is huge in Japan, probably the biggest franchise in Japan at this point. And I think that system eventually is going to get some traction in Japan. And once that happens, then more developers are going to pile on from Japan. Once that happens, more people start buying it. Western developers jump on board. It could be a while, but I also think Sony is willing to stick with it. They're not going to just abandon it or bail on it. I mean, the thing's only been out for about a year.
Let it have its
Well,
Christmas.
it's not even a year. I mean, it's
Right.
been 8 months.
Right. Let it have a holiday season. I think better days are ahead for the Vita. I don't think there's any denying that the hardware is freaking awesome.
Hey, was it 3 weeks? Assassin's Creed Liberation.
Right.
I mean, that's a game. If you've got a Vita, that's a game you want to get for your Vita. If you like the first 2 Assassin's Creed games, and I haven't played the finished version. I'm just basing this off what I played at that event a couple of weeks ago. But it's fun, and it really shows off the power of the machine. So
Yep.
yeah, we know it's there, and if Sony are prepared to back it, and this is going to be the interesting thing. If they come with a PS4 next year, they've got to have some form of Vita integration that is really above and beyond and exciting. They can't just put it in the corner like the red-headed stepchild.
Yeah, I would say keep it. I mean, it's like Ryan said, at this point, you're never going to get your value back for it. The only way you're going to get the value back for that machine for what you paid for it is to play games on it. The games are coming. Eventually, they're going to be here. Eventually, there's going to be so many games that you're going to have to actually choose which one you want to play instead of playing the only good one available.
Well,
so,
at the very least, Puppeteer looks great.
there's a bunch. Tearaway looks amazing. I mean, there are some games in development that look pretty damn awesome. So, I say stick it out. Don't sell it. Otherwise, I think you're going to regret it ultimately. I think the Vita will be successful. It just may take a little while. All right, that's it for this week's edition of Invisible Walls. One more thing before we go. We have a metric ton of Hawken beta codes. As you remember from earlier in the show, our winner for best downloadable game from E3 2012, Hawken. We have a ton of beta codes. You have to follow us on Twitter. That's at Invisible Walls, all one word. That is the only way you're going to get a code, and we do have a ton. So don't think we have like a handful, and if you're not on it, you're not going to get any. Just keep checking our Twitter account throughout the weekend. Ryan, you're going to be handling that, right?
Yep.
Sending it out in batches, so be quick on that keyboard. But we're not just going to put them all up at once. So if, some people don't spend all weekend on Twitter, totally get that.
And I'll make sure I obscure some of them so if people have bots, they won't just grab them all.
Right, which has become a problem on Twitter. So anyway, that game is looking really awesome. PC only. Should probably bring that up. Not for the consoles. So all you PC players out there, if you want to get in on the Hawken beta, you should follow us on Twitter and get yourself a code. And that's pretty much it. Pretty good show. Lots of good DLC. I think blockbusters start rolling out next week. I know I'm basically at the point now where I'm going to review 3 games in the next 2 weeks. Big embargo's coming up around end of October, early November, so make sure you stick around on the site. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Invisible Walls is up and out.
So you stuck around, and now you can partake in our little secret where you have more beta codes for PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. We will be giving them out on Twitter, but if you see a character replaced with a question mark, it's the number 3, because that's my favorite number, and no bots will grab them. Though there will be some regular codes to grab as well. Thanks for watching.
See this and other GT shows and game reviews on the GT Originals iOS app, available now on the App Store.
Okay, one last secret code giveaway. I'm recording this on an iPad because this is for all the Mac users out there. Good Old Games, CD Projekt Red, they hooked us up. They're going to hook you up. We have 20 codes to give you 5 free games on Good Old Games, plus The Witcher 2, which is pretty sweet. So again, stay tuned to the Twitter, and if there's some OS X stuff on there, maybe you can figure out how the codes will be replaced.